So after yesterday's show, we recorded the TV show on the First TV, thefirsttv.com. You can watch the second 2 hours of this radio show on thefirsttv.com right now. And we interviewed Ron Johnson. The special was about Trump's cabinet picks, all the president's men. So we interviewed Ron Johnson, senator from Wisconsin, get some insight into the process, all that. And before we went on, I said, hey, Ron, thanks for your health roundtable that you did like last September. Yeah, helpful and encouraging, and thanks for doing that. And he said, oh, well, yeah. He said, but it was all initiated or inspired by the interview that Tucker Carlson did with Casey Means and her brother, Callie. I've never heard of these guys. I was like, oh, okay, cool. I'll go watch the interview. I've watched like half of this interview. These two are incredible. They are brother, sister, raised in D.C. Their dad was the assistant to Vice President Nelson Rockefeller. She went to Stanford and then Stanford Med School, and she was in residency to be a surgeon. And she said, this is insane. All this chronic disease is out of control. I quit. And she dropped out at the age of 30. And her brother, who went to Stanford and then went to Harvard Business School, so you with me on like the caliber, or not I shouldn't say caliber, like the high ranking of the elite here of these guys. And this guy's at Harvard Business. And he said, sister, you're crazy. You're out of your mind. You have to keep climbing that ladder. And then he woke up about how horrible this healthcare system is as well. So they joined forces, and they ended up now working with RFK. And they're like the main like policy people behind the Make America Healthy Again platform through RFK Jr. These two people that I've never heard of until now. And they're incredibly impressive. The way they talk, how they're talking. Casey, the girl, is talking about like the spiritualness of all. It's like really, really impressive. And they were on Rogan. I haven't heard the Rogan interview yet, but I want to play these two clips here. Let's start with Callie first. So this speaks to the point I was speaking of a second ago of sticking it to the man. There's a lot of reasons to be healthy, and I don't know, people are motivated in different ways. Sticking it to the man motivates me to do a lot of things. I love sticking it to the man. Oh, you want me to do that? Well, tough. Like, I'm definitely not doing that now. And in fact, we'll do the opposite. And there's so many things in our life that we are told you have to do. You have to like this. You have to like Taylor Swift or whatever it is. And I was like, reject. That's just my instinct. It's my nature. I'm like, if you tell me that I have to like this, I have to do this, I have to think this is cool, I'm out. And in fact, you're probably a force for evil, and I'm going to do the exact opposite against you. That's just me, maybe. So a lot of reasons to be healthy, and one of them may be to stick it to the man. Here is what I was speaking of a moment ago. This is Callie. This is the Callie Means. This is the brother.
1990s, the two largest food companies in the world were R.J. Reynolds and Philip Morris. What happened is when the Surgeon General way too late in the 1980s said cigarettes were maybe problematic, these were some of the largest companies in the world with the largest cash piles of any company in the world. So what they did is they used their cash piles to buy food companies. We think about the 80s as the Wall Street era M&A, a lot of deals. The two biggest M&A deals up until 1990 in world history were cigarette companies buying food companies. So
okay. M&A is merger and acquisition. I've never heard that in my entire life. Have you ever heard that? What do you mean the cigarette companies bought the food companies? I've never heard that. You have your cigarette companies, and then over here, and then you have your food companies over there. What do you mean? I've never bought food from Philip Morris. Have you ever bought food from a cigarette company? No. Well, you have, actually. In 1988, Philip Morris, because I've never heard that before, so I had to do my own research to make sure that's true. Philip Morris bought Kraft in 1988 for $13.1 billion, the largest non-oil merger in the United States at the time. This was after they bought General Foods. And then after that, they bought Nabisco. The cigarette companies. R.J. Reynolds bought Del Monte, the fruit and vegetable company, Del Monte. And then they bought Hawaiian Punch. Hawaiian Punch, at the time, was a cocktail mixer. They decided to market it to kids as a juice. And they were the first nationally distributed juice box, which in 1983 increased sales by 35%. So it was the tobacco companies that bought these food companies. Now, what was the benefit? Or I shouldn't say benefit, that's not the right sentence at all. When the tobacco companies bought the food benefit, what did they do to them? Well, they made it all more addictive. That's what they brought to the game. They made it all more addictive. Now they've since spun them off. They sold the food companies, but they already they put into it the systems in place. And it's the tobacco companies that changed the game for our food systems. It's crazy.
You had in the 90s these two cigarette companies very strategically do two things. They shifted their thousands of scientists who were experts at making cigarettes addictive to the food department. So we had the rise of ultra-processed food where our food now is a science experiment. The second thing they did is they shifted their lobbying. So the cigarette industry, of course, was the biggest, lobbying spenders and had a good playbook. They shifted their playbook on lobbying and rigging institutions of trust to food. So they created the food pyramid. So the cigarette industry, through the food companies they bought, paid off the FDA, the USDA, Harvard to create reports saying sugar doesn't cause obesity. And they lobbied for the food pyramid in the 1990s, we all remember, which said, animal-based fats are bad, carbs are good. Remember, carbs and sugar were basically the base of the pyramid. So the American diet, because of that, because we trust our medical institutions, which they know, we shifted our diet significantly to ultra-processed food.
Real quick, before I play the rest of this, this isn't just some random guy that I'm playing on some random podcast. These are the two people behind RFK Jr., who is now the Department of Health and Human Services. So this isn't some fringe random thing that I'm playing. These are the people who are behind the changes that are going to happen in our health and food systems via RFK in Health and Human Services. You with me on this? So this is happening. These are the people.
It was very intentional, the food pyramid. That was a ultra-processed food marketing document that carbs were fine, sugar was fine. And that shifted, and you look at dietary patterns. Today, a child diet is 70% ultra-processed food. Now, what does that mean, right? Those are literally foods invented by the cigarette industry to addict kids. Obviously we've got sugar, but there's thousands of different ingredients and science concoctions that scientists work in a lab to make it more palatable, to make it more addictive. So food consumption, calorie consumption has skyrocketed. And the byproduct of these toxic ingredients that the cigarette industry I watched and helped with this, bought off the USDA, bought off the FDA, is they wreak havoc among our cells. The foundation of our diet is ingredients that we aren't by.
There's still time to give the gift of Whoop.
That's my ad. I've been doing all this. I guess I've been doing all this Googling, all this searching on fitness and exercise and health. And they're like, you need to buy the Whoop.
To eat that didn't exist 100 years ago. The foundation of our diet is three things when you look at any label. It's added sugar, processed sugar, which basically didn't exist 100 years ago. It's just from natural sources. Ultra-processed grains, which were invented 100 years ago. The processing takes the fiber off. They're basically hidden sugars, devoid of nutritional value. And seed oils. Seed oils are the top source of American calories. And this is actually
seed oil.
The
top source of American calories.
Soybean oil, canola oil. This is the baseline of American calories right now. And these seed oils were actually created by John D. Rockefeller as a byproduct of oil production. It's basically engine lubricant. And the Rockefeller and those aligned with him actually lobbied to have this suitable for human consumption. That's how seed oils came into the American diet. They're much cheaper, but they're highly inflammatory. And just by definition, just at the highest level, these ingredients and all the chemicals we can't name that are in ultra-processed food are not natural ingredients that our bodies are made to handle. So there's, as we talk about in Good Energy, this produces a lot of side effects to our cells. The food industry isn't trying to kill Americans. They're trying to make food cheap and addictive. And what I learned,
So there. Tom from Ohio called in and said he used to work for Taco Bell. And he said Taco Bell used to be owned by R.J. Reynolds. Used to be owned by Taco Bell was owned by the tobacco company. Isn't that crazy? So right now, Yum Brands. So I obviously have to search that. Find it. Yum Brands owns KFC, Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, and Habit Burger. Here it says, the company's history began in 1977 when Pepsi entered the restaurant business by acquiring Pizza Hut from their co-founders. A year later, Pepsi bought Taco Bell from their founder. And then in July, Glenn Bell. And then in July 1986, R.J. Reynolds sold KFC to PepsiCo. So R.J. Reynolds used to own Pepsi too? All right, I guess I got to figure more of that out. That's crazy. I had no idea. That is unbelievable. Doesn't this make you want to stick it to the man? I mean, doesn't that? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe that clip to me, that makes me like, oh, like to heck with all you people. I'm out. You're never gonna get capture of my kids ever again. All right, here's his sister, Casey.
Americans want to be healthy. Americans do not want to die early. They do not want to see their kids with all these chronic health issues like autism and food allergies and obesity and prediabetes and 40% of teens with mental health issues. No one wants this, but the system is rigged against the American patient to create diseases and then profit off of them. This is happening across almost every lever of our major industries, from processed food to tech to pharma. And so really what Americans need to understand is that these trends can stop immediately. We need to understand why we're sick, which is our primarily our toxic food system and the ways that systematically several industries are profiting off of our addiction and illness. And if we can understand that and create very simple top-down and bottom-up strategies to address it, Americans will become rapidly healthier. And so as a physician, I took an oath to do no harm. And I took an oath to help patients thrive. And so the way that we can do that is by helping people understand the levers of corruption that are essentially keeping us sick.
The levers of corruption. Here, I found a list here. So Philip Morris owned Kraft, General Foods, Oscar Mayer, Post Cereals, Maxwell House Coffee, Jell-O, and Kool-Aid. Which is like all the center. That's like basically everything in the center aisles.